Sure. And I think with open source, the biggest way in which open source really grows is with community, right? And that is why we need everyone's help from the community to help uh, build really great solutions around pieces. Because of course, as you saw, that with just the insane amount of information that you receive from Pieces OS whenever you create a new snippet, or the kind of information that you get, or tagging is really powerful. And we have had a lot of like folks who have requested for a lot of like open source features from time to time. And I think like now is a great time for us to really kind of take those into consideration. So of course, as being a developer first company, we always will be seeking community suggestions for integrations or even for open source projects for Pieces. And for that, we are officially launching, and in fact, we do now have a dedicated open source channel within our Discord server. So if you are like, let's say, new to Discord and you're joining the Pieces Discord for the first time, we are actually asking you during the onboarding process itself that if you're interested in open source, then you'll be automatically made to join the open source channel, and you'll get the open source role as well. But if you're already a Discord user for Pieces Discord server, then I'll recommend that you can just get, or you can just join the open source server or open source channel. And a lot of the communication that will be taking place will be around open source, and whatever upcoming plugins that we have, SDKs that we have, will be happening exclusively over there. And of course, there are a lot of like community managers within our Discord server who will be there to help you out. So we have myself, we have Mason, you must be knowing him, he's pretty active on our Discord, and of course Sophia as well, who will be there to kind of onboard you if you have any questions regarding what are some of the open source integrations that we have, or if you wish to contribute to one of the open source projects that we have. For instance, like if you want to contribute to the TS or the TypeScript SDK, feel free to join, and we'll be helping you, kind of guiding you, like probably working on certain issues that might be open already, and assigning them if you're interested in kind of contributing to them, or if you have any suggestions about the SDKs themselves, then that is also something that will be possible by joining our community. And of course, open source is all about like collaboration, right? And welcoming new folks into the community, because a lot of times, we whenever we are kind of starting to contribute to any open source project, one of the biggest problems that newcomers and newcomers can be even experienced programmers or even junior programmers, right? They always face this issue that how do they set up the project, or how do they make their first ever contribution. So I think for that, and in order to grow the community really well, we will be having regular cadence. We are essentially thinking of, for now, having one meeting every 2 weeks with our open source community on Discord, via the Discord spaces. So it's like Twitter spaces, but it's on Discord. And where we'll be primarily introducing new members in our open source community. We'll be talking about some of the existing projects and issues that the community has been working on. And of course, we'll be open to questions where you will be able to directly interact with, the Pieces, the staff at Pieces. And of course, like being a developer first company, we will be very open to feedback, and of course we'll be always there to kind of guide you in case of any doubts that you might have with respect to our open source projects. So we'll be there to kind of take into any sort of feedback or any new ideas that you might have related to open source projects that you want to build. So think of this like as a real time 101 sessions that we will be planning for all of you, in order to kind of help on all of you get onboarded to using our SDKs, or if you have a like, let's say, an open source project of your own. Because of course, as we've kind of mentioned this earlier as well, we're going to be releasing a lot of SDKs very soon, and of course we'll be looking for community feedback to see which particular SDKs are required. So of course, even in this live AMA, we had like someone requesting for the Python SDK. So of course, Python is one of the most popular languages out there, and apart from Python, we are coming up with Rust and a bunch of other programming languages as well, for which we'll be releasing the SDKs. And of course, as kind of Savu mentioned earlier, that we will also be open sourcing a lot of our plugins. So a lot of developers love to use the Obsidian plugin, Zopital Lab plugin, JetBrains plugin. So we'll be open sourcing some of these, and of course, if you wish to contribute to these open source plugins, we'll be more than happy to take into any considerations or PRs that you might request. And of course, I think it's also very important to spotlight community projects, or the whatever kind of projects that the community is building. And in the future, we will also be open to sponsor potentially sponsor certain open source projects that are driven by the community, because ultimately it is the community that drives open source. And if we don't have active open source contributors, then of course, there's no use of all of these SDKs. So these are meant for all of you to use and build some interesting projects. And of course, we have already had a lot of community feedback on what kind of projects they want to build, and I think we'll be hiring some of those. But yeah, it's really, I mean, with kind of information that you get from our Pieces OS, you can probably build yourself a ChatGPT clone with Pieces OS, and of course, QGPT APIs. So I mean, it's just limitless in terms of what you can build with this.
Yeah, and I would say, Shivay, you're spot on there, where Pieces OS is a platform that we build on, right? We use our SDKs and everything like that, but that's only limited to what we can imagine, right? And there are some first principles that are exhibited in the SDK around, hey, look, if I'm a client-side application and I have this object, well, I know I'm going to want a title for it. I know I'm going to want a date for it, right? I know I'm going to want the classification for it. So all these kind of fundamental nice to haves are built into Pieces OS, where, you pass in a single string and you get something back that's deeply enriched, deeply kind of optimized for presenting it. But then also too, there's the data side of things, right? So if you have internal tooling systems and you wanted to tag all of your, Obsidian notes, or you wanted to tag maybe some tickets, or, open to issues on GitHub or something, there are ways you could experiment with Pieces OS to say, hey, is there a screenshot here? Send it into Pieces OS, pull the code out, get the enriched materials out, and whatnot. So there is the building applications on it, and there's also the internal tooling and data piping that it deeply supports as well. But yeah, and I will confirm we will sponsor, a good amount of open source efforts that are working to make, not only our own products, interesting for users and adding their own flavor to it, but also too bringing new products and experiences to market, right? So Vim and, Visual Studio and all the other likes. So yeah, well said.